Main event, UFC 275. As always, one half your host and Craig Allen. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Craig Allen FNP. With me to my left, to your right, respective socials at Matt Allen FNP. I'm amped up. We have Glover Teixeira taking on Jiri Prochazka for the promotion's light heavyweight belt. And if you asked me 5 years ago if this fight would happen, I would say no. John Jones is going to be the champion till the end of time. But we're here, and I'm excited for it, because for Glover Teixeira, he's on a tidy little win streak. His boxing is what got him to the dance, and the UFC's promoting it as such, but it's his groundwork that's really gotten things done. And we're on the right side of the history as Fight Night picks, because we thought that Glover Teixeira would beat Thiago Santos, but I never thought he'd beat Jan Blachowicz, and he made it look very easy. Second round submission finish there for Jiri Prochazka, a win streak that spans 12 straight fights that's been going on since 2016, getting it done over with RIZIN in the UFC, finish wins over Volkan Oezdemir, former title challenger at UFC 220, and a big-time win over a guy who had a sniff at the belt, maybe won it, Dominic Reyes. But Matt, I mean, Jiri Prochazka's come in and just kind of lit the world on fire. He is the favorite this weekend, taking on Glover Teixeira. And listen, I let the people, I threw it out there, YouTube community tab, Instagram, vote for that thumbnail. They wanted Teixeira, they wanted Prochazka all alone on their own. And I kind of did a sneaky little thing with that thumbnail, and I put them in close proximity. Jiri Prochazka against Teixeira. If it gets into close boxing range, Glover Teixeira is just like Marge Simpson with those uppercuts in close proximity. You don't want to be there, and that's what I did out there in that thumbnail for the people.
What I really like about Glover Teixeira is that he doesn't lead with his chin. A lot of strikers will lead with their chin and then throw. Glover Teixeira is very just intelligent with his own striking defense. Now, the problem is, he does duck a lot. Rumble Johnson was able to capitalize on that. He knocked him out with a beautifully placed uppercut in, 13 seconds, I believe. Alexander Gustafsson was also able to hurt him with the uppercut multiple times. But I would say Rumble Johnson and Gustafsson are two of the higher level strikers, especially with their own boxing on the inside in this division's history, if we're being honest. And that's why a guy like Glover can struggle with types of fighters like that. Jiri is a very good striker, but he's not cut from the same cloth of those two previous strikers. He will throw kicks, he will throw wider hooks, he will throw spinning elbows like we saw in the Dominic Reyes fight. But this is something that has to be said about Jiri Prochazka and his UFC run. It's been very Justin Gaethje-esque. It's been very bright, very popular. It's been star-studded. They've all been like high-profile fights, either on the main card of a pay-per-view or a main event itself his last time out. He got hurt bad by Dominic Reyes. Like a couple of times.
Volkan Oezdemir.
That's what I mean. Like, he got up-kicked by Dominic Reyes and almost died. Like, he got completely flatlined, just fell on top of him, and then knocked him out. And then against Volkan was having success with his boxing early on in that fight. And Jiri's someone who will try to game the system, like Craig's doing right now. Like,
hands down, head out, eats a shot, and then kind of stands there.
Lennox Lewis got knocked out by Hasim Rahman, and it was the exact same thing. Lennox Lewis was like moving backwards, and he smiled. He was like, haha, you're not going to knock me out. And Rahman knocked him out with a huge right hand.
Anderson Silva, Chris Weidman too.
Exactly. Like, cockiness will get you caught at a certain point. Yeah, it's cool to shoot like Steph Curry and turn around before it goes in. But Nick Young also did that, and now it's a pretty famous gif where he shot, turned around, and did not go in. Jiri, I do think, has a lot of confidence in his own durability because he can take a really big shot and keep on throwing his own power shots, and a lot of the times it helps him. If you go back and watch a lot of his fights, it's opponent cracks him with a big shot, gets excited, and then he absolutely demolishes them with a huge shot of his own. It just, he balances that line very finely. Like, he's like Chris Davis in 2013 in MMA. Like, yes, he might set the league record for home runs, but he's also probably going to set the record for strikeouts too, and that's why I do think when it goes badly for Prochazka, it's going to look awful. It's going to be one of those Adolfo Vieira black belt killers get submitted himself, because Prochazka does have some suspect losses throughout his career. He lost to Carl Albrechtsen.
He has 3 losses!
I know, but the guys who he lost to were able to take advantage of a similar aspect of his game. Jiri is a phenomenal striker, but if you do make him work at a very high level, you can take him down as the fight goes on. And for Glover, we've seen him do it time and time again. He can eat barrages of punches and make the fight difficult no matter what. Where most fighters panic wrestle, it's almost like Glover Teixeira's plan. Like, the fight doesn't get started until Glover ends up on his back and then goes for his own takedown. That's when the fight really does begin. And even at 42 years of age, I might favor Glover's longevity in this fight. He has not given me a reason to think he's going to fade as this fight goes on. Against Anthony Smith, starts out poorly, builds as the fight goes on. He did the exact same thing against Thiago Santos. So I think early on in this fight, Prochazka's the much faster guy, is the much more athletic guy. But if this fight does make it to round 3, let's say, I think this could go into like fight of the year type stuff.
Prochazka used to fight 10-minute 1 rounds.
I'm well aware the rules were different.
So again, for Jiri Prochazka's last loss back in 2015, 16, let's make sure we get that one correct. He was taking on King Mo's. The end of 2015, it was New Year's Eve. He had beat Vadim Nemkov. He had beat Satoshi Ishii not long before that, a couple of days before. Tournament championship, King Mo, and he loses in that fight. And again, King Mo, former Strikeforce light heavyweight champ.
King Mo got beat by Crow Cop in that tournament.
You're making... King Mo didn't get beat by Crow Cop.
I'm almost certain Crow Cop won that tournament.
King Mo won. But if you do look at it...
He was older in his career.
If you do look at it, I mean, lost to Carl Albrechts and lost to King Mo. Wins for Jiri Prochazka. He has a knockout win very quickly over Bruno Capelloza. You know, PFL's champion at heavyweight last year, and he's going to buzzsaw through the competition. And he already has in his one win in 2022. But those are just some of the guys. I mean, again, he was able to beat King Mo after that. He was able to beat, who else? Like, just pick some of the names off his record. He's won 12.
CB Dalloway won it. Like, that's the thing about Jiri. Before he came to the UFC, a lot of his wins were over aging UFC vets who were just kind of fed to him. And that's why it was hard to get a good tell as to how good he was going to be. Because, like, Brandon Halsey didn't belong in the cage with him. Neither did CB Dalloway. Neither did Fabio Maldonado. Even Muhammad Lawal, King Mo in 2019, was so far past his prime by the time he fought Jiri that it was hard to get a good gauge as to how good he was going to be. Because that, like, 5-fight run that he went on before he did come over was against guys who you fully expected him to be able to knock out early on in most of those fights.
Yeah, and it was. CB Dalloway, Fabio Maldonado, King Mo, Brandon Halsey, and the Honey Bear, Jay Kyung, my guy. But good wins for Prochazka, but again, you're winning in ways that people would expect you to win. So if we do parlay that forward, ground game, Prochazka famously went to fight ready as a part of this camp. It's a long camp for these two guys. We've been talking about this fight for months and months at this point, but Prochazka went to fight ready, trained with Cejudo in the pillows, trained with John Jones. Yes, John Jones at fight ready. And then rounded it out the last couple of weeks, getting acclimatized in Thailand at Bang Tao Muay Thai with the Hickman brothers before going over to Singapore to take this fight against Teixeira. For Teixeira, training at home, Teixeira MMA and fitness. He was a landscaper at one point. Now he's an MMA gym owner.
Like, that video that Brian Campbell and Luke Thomas did where they sat down with Glover was awesome. Where he's like, yeah, maybe I didn't come to America all that legally the first time, and it caused some issues. But just his whole journey to, like, where he is, and now he has a whole stable of fighters in Connecticut. Like, Glover Teixeira is one of the best success stories from MMA there is. Like, he had a hard career. He never got the noticeability. He never got the recognition that he deserved until later on in his career went on this massive run. And now he's finally UFC champion. Like, you cannot tell the story of this division without talking about Glover Teixeira now. So, like, win, lose, or draw, Glover Teixeira is never going to be a loser in this whole game.
Not doing it for the money, just doing it for the legacy. And
Yeah.
I look at this one, it's kind of weird because Felice Herrig, Karolina Kowalkiewicz last week. It was a really tough one. Kowalkiewicz on 5 losses, Herrig on 3 on the way in. And I didn't see the quotables from Felice Herrig where she was like, I don't need the money anymore. I don't need to fight. And if the UFC cuts me, it is what it is. And then she went, I'm retiring. And it was sad at the end, and of course it is. But I haven't heard that out of Glover Teixeira yet, but if I do, boy, I don't like that. But for Teixeira, again, one of the toughest, most durable guys. You look at that 13-second knockout loss to Rumble Johnson. His last 3 losses, Rumble Johnson, Gustafsson in the 5th round, and a decision loss to Beast in 25-8, who's going to be a Bellator champ one day. We have a look at the odds for this fight. Teixeira opened a plus 108, plus 166. Jiri Prochazka opened a minus 130. He is a minus 202 favorite for a guy whose nickname has switched from Denisa to BJP. He is favored to win this fight, Matt. The over-under on Topology. It's a surprise to us, it is to you, but that doesn't matter because this is a big-time fight. We're going to throw it on over to our YouTube community tab. We want to hear from you. 768 total votes, 63% Prochazka. Cowboys SB saying Glover's going to get his effing block knocked off. LOL, he was set up for Jan. Jiri but accidentally tripped into a sub and stole the belt. So Cowboys not a fan of Glover Teixeira. We've got Yuri's wrestling isn't the best, but training at Fight Ready can definitely help that. I'll stick to Glover, but it's definitely 50-50. Safe to say it doesn't go the distance. Gerald Lynch saying Prochazka is hungry in every sense of the word, whereas Teixeira is fighting for legacy. Youthful hunger will win out. Bo is saying either Jiri KOs Glover or Glover weathers the storm and subs Jiri. And Matt, I'll give one more person the opportunity. D.D. Lynch saying if Glover can take him down, it's only a matter of time. So Matt, the fans split on this. A lot of comments, and thank you over there in the YouTube community tab. But the fans going with Jiri Prochazka. What are we saying here?
Experience in MMA is one of the most important just skills a fighter can have. And we see this all the time. Someone like Charles Oliveira, who has a lot of skill. Just, it took him time to really refine his skill and figure out what he is and isn't good at. Glover's another example of this. Like, his top control, his pressure, his ground and pound, his submission ability is basically perfected at this point. Like, if you get underneath Glover Teixeira, the fight is probably going to be over at a certain point because he's that effective. He makes you pay for every second you spend under him. The other side of the Glover Teixeira story is, though, you're going to be able to hit him once, twice, maybe 3, 4 clean times before he will be able to get that takedown. And at 39, he can eat those shots. At 40, he can eat those shots. But we have seen Glover get rocked and get hurt before in his career where he wasn't able to take advantage of it. In the Corey Anderson fight, he looked pretty old. He was slow, he was behind a lot, he was just not really able to close the distance, and Corey Anderson was able to use his movement and just get away from Glover Teixeira. I think Juri's going to be able to do the exact same thing early on in this fight, and I will say this, in the 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round, Glover's probably going to win all those rounds.
If we get there.
If we get there, exactly. But if this makes the 3rd round, like, I can't do this, of course. My pick is officially switched to Glover Teixeira. I just don't think it's going to get there. I do think Juri's going to be able to finish it in the early 10 minutes because Glover is there to be hit. He does have good left to right movement, but it is somewhat predictable. And a striker of Jiri Prochazka's caliber should be able to set him up for a big shot. But Yuri's been hit before, and it makes me nervous as all hell. Because if he does get rocked by Glover and then immediately taken down, Glover's going to beat his head into the ground, probably take a few teeth with it and choke him out. So I think if it goes bad for Jiri, it's going to go terribly, but I still have him in this fight.
Fight doesn't go the distance is minus 450, which tells you all you need to know about this one. I do like Jiri Prochazka because, again, he's fast for a light heavyweight, and he's big for a light heavyweight, too. You can see it there. He's an inch taller. He's got 4 inches of reach. He doesn't really use his height and his length to his advantage at all points. He will crash the distance, and he is susceptible to getting boxed up. And Glover Teixeira, again, from the thumbnail, is a guy that in tight Marge Simpson's guys.
I always think about the Rashad Evans knockout that he had. He immediately went chest to chest with him, threw the craziest left hook you've ever seen, and immediately flatlined Evans against the cage.
So a great opportunity for Glover in this fight. But again, for Jiri, he's one of those guys that will get a little happy when he rocks guys, but I think in this matchup, he is the faster guy. He does have that power in his hands, and I think Jiri Prochazka will become a UFC champion, which is crazy because, Matt, a couple years ago, we made a video, light heavyweight tournament video, where we went Jiri Prochazka all the way through a tournament because we threw everybody. He wasn't even in the UFC at that point, and John Jones, those two guys were in the thumbnail. And I had Jiri Prochazka winning the whole way through because John Jones had a harder strength of schedule on his side of the bracket. But Matt, I think it's going to be an amazing fight. Both of us going with Czechia's own. That's going to throw people for a loop because they're going to go Czech Republic's own Jiri Prochazka to get the win. We have some big time fights on this card, and it should be noted, I'm away all week, so no question mark kicks, but we'll get creative with our final picks after weigh-ins. We'll throw those out there on our socials. So make sure you're checking it out. At Fight Night Picks, at Craig Allen FNP, at Matt Allen FNP. No sidekick for this card. Hopefully you guys enjoy the fights coming up this week. And Matt, we can look forward to some cards coming up. Arman Tsarukyan's taking on Mateusz Gamrot at the end of June.
What a fight.
There's a lot of big fights coming up that I know I'm excited about, and you are too.
We're getting a rematch of one of the greatest fights of all time this weekend. How can you not be excited? For Glover and Jiri. Jiri, if he is able to win this fight, could go down as one of the next all-time greats. He has that kind of eye-catching talent. And it's always nice when the best is also one of the flashiest. It just makes life all that much better. Like, when Max Holloway was the UFC champion, it's pretty cool. It was like, hey, not only is one of the best fighters the champion of his division, the most exciting fighter is the champion of his division, and if Jiri is able to capture the title, he will probably do the exact same thing. So it is an extremely exciting pay-per-view coming up this weekend.
Great card coming up. Make sure you look out for those socials. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, so we always say,
let's get into it.